Gibson gets pulled over for drunk driving, and the initial story was that he was angry and he was worried that it was going to hurt his career. And then
all of this, well, you see, that's the thing with anybody who gets arrested for one thing, has probably done it about 20 times, and that's the one time they got arrested for it or picked up for it. Generally, as a general rule, it's not. Of course, it's not always the case, but and in this case, you know, these kind of things were bound to boil over, and at some point pop out, and the slightest provocation, because remember, the setup to the story, he's actually not even that drunk. He's at a .12. Okay, sure, that's, you know, that's .08, I believe, in California is above the legal limit for drinking and driving, but it's not. I mean, some people come in at a .2, they're plastered, they're gone, they're obliterated, etc. .12 is not that drunk. Didn't take much provocation for him to say what he said. Ben Mankiewicz, what does Mel Gibson tell the arresting officer?
Well, among the other things, three things that stand out. One, he describes, he calls the officer a effing Jew. Well, screw it, we're on satellite radio, we'll bleep it. He calls him a fucking Jew.
Well, you know, I'm not sure that's true, actually. He says, the quotes I have here, first of all, let me do just a tiny bit more setup on it.
I'm sorry, you're right. I misread it. I'm sorry. No,
that's all right. Yeah. Well, I'll get to it in a second. Okay. So the officer doesn't want to handcuff him, right? He says, look, you're over the limit. I don't want to handcuff you. Let's just keep this thing under control, right? And Gibson tries to run away from him. Okay.
Actually, takes off.
Takes off on foot, has to run to his car, and the officer has to go pull Gibson back.
And then at that point, he handcuffs him, of course, and puts him in the back of the car, and he's going to drive him in, and that's when Gibson loses it. And first, he doesn't start with anti-Semitic stuff right away. He starts with, I own Malibu.
Right, I'm on Malibu, and I will use all my resources to get you, to make you pay for this.
To get even with you. Right. And at that point, he starts cursing the officer, and he says, again, here, earmuff the kids, we're on satellite radio, we're going to do it for real here. He says, you motherfucker, I'm going to fuck you. Okay.
Whoa.
At that point, I'd be a little amused if I was an officer. But anyway, and the officer says in his report that Gibson almost continually threatened me, saying he owns Malibu and he will spend all of his money to get even with me. Then Gibson gets into, out of nowhere, saying, quote, fucking Jews.
Right, he didn't call him a fucking Jew. He just said, fucking Jews.
Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world.
Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. And then finally, the kicker.
Are you a Jew?
Now, I have a couple things to say about this. And by the way, then later in prison, he tried to...
so Mel Gibson obviously on Hezbollah's side.
Obviously, right. According to all the... it's weird. Mel Gibson had recently just angered the conservatives and Fox News chums who he'd been stood with for so long for his very strong criticism of American foreign policy and the war in Iraq. Gibson tried to take out his Johnson while locked up. And they were worried he was going to urinate on the floor of the cell, and so they had to take him away. And then a female officer came by, and he said, what are you looking at, sugar tits?
That's my favorite quote, actually. Yeah. It beats Are You a Jew?
What are you looking at, sugar tits?
Who says that? I mean, look, by the way, man, he's the biggest lightweight...
Oh, my God, I'm so going to use that. Yeah, no, I was going to say, a 1.2, lightweight if he's spewing all this nonsense.
No, but he's supposed to be an alcoholic. That's the biggest lightweight alcoholic I've ever seen in my life. At a .12 throwing sugar tits around.
Sugar tits, what do you know about being a lightweight?
You know, this is the great thing. I go back a little bit, but, you know, one of the things he said, you know, at the beginning, he's like, my life is, we'll stop cursing now. My life is effed, right? Mm-hmm. And he said this in the beginning, before going into the, and the thing of it was, hey, you just pulled a .12. Everybody, we're all forgiving. You've had a relapse. You didn't hurt anybody. Go into rehab. Your life was so not effed.
Dude, you
until made a movie. You kept talking.
You made a movie that nearly made $1 billion, okay? Believe me, your life is not effed. But believe me, Hollywood's going to forgive that.
Yeah, and they should.
Sometimes when you're drunk, you say things that you don't really mean, but you say them to be hurtful, especially if you're in a fight, right? But sometimes, as all guys know, when you're drunk, you do something that you actually wanted to do all along, but didn't have the nerve to do.
Right. Both things are true. Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Okay, so sometimes you try to make out with a girl that you wouldn't have normally tried to make out with if you weren't drunk. And sometimes you say something you've been dying to say.
Right.
and didn't have an excuse to say before. Gibson has been holding this in for how many years?
Yeah, probably all his life.
And he's been dying to say it, and he finally said it, and it's costing him. It's going to burn him big.